bit.
41-28 was the final score on Sunday in Foxborough, and the game was not nearly that close. Garbage time galore points for the L.A. Chargers. They were down 35-7 at the end of the first half. The Patriots taking full advantage of the bye week, full advantage of playoff experience. Chris, I've been saying this for weeks. When you come into the preparation for the game, when you have guys in the locker room who have been there, but Brady, 38 postseason games.
It's insane.
Bill Belichick, 40 as a head coach. You make it so much easier for your players to understand what to expect. They have faith in the process,
right? And
they know if they listen to what they're being told, both by Belichick and by Brady, it's all going to work out because they've been there time and time and time again.
You're right. The Patriots players can look at two of their leaders and go, okay, they've been here, they've done that. They're very calm. Their fact that they're calm and, attention to detail, it rubs off on the rest of the football team. When the offensive line and the rest of the offensive group sees the quarterback that's unflappable and calm in a big week and every moment, they start to go, okay, things are good. Our quarterback feels good. It rubs off on the rest of the football team. So you're exactly right. That experience comes back to help them so much. And, to the game yesterday, their experience against that defensive scheme is what killed the Los Angeles Chargers. Having them play that Seattle scheme, which Gus Bradley came from Seattle and really was the architect of that great Seattle's Pete Carroll defense that was in 2 Super Bowls. Gus Bradley is really the guy who kind of tinkered with that and invented it. Well, New England's got a great experience of that because they got 2 weeks to prepare for that in Super Bowl 59 and 2 weeks again to prepare for it in Super Bowl 51 against the Atlanta Falcons. And I think between that, their preparation for that, and then the Chargers' lack of size on the defensive line, we saw the Patriots run the ball. And then they're not afraid to get in third and short. And, stats goes, where's Bosa? Where's Ingram? Well, when you're running the ball and then it's 3rd and 3 or 3rd and 4 and Brady doesn't have to sit there and wait for people to get down the field because it's 3rd and long, he can get the ball out of his hands and they can design a quick little throw to get the 3rd and 3 and 3rd and 4 to get the first down. Bosa and Ingram become, they don't become a part of the football game. And I think that's what we saw yesterday.
Yeah, and for the Chargers, I don't know what's better. We kind of touched on this last hour.
I think you're right.
Is it better to go into the next season just getting splattered and being reminded you got a long way to go, or to have it so close where you think you're going to beat the Patriots and lose and get thrust back down to 0-0 and have to rebuild? It's a long offseason when you end it that way. But I think the Chargers can look in the mirror and say, here's what we need to do if we want to be like the Patriots, and
yes,
we're getting there. But we need to make some improvements. We need to make some adjustments. And they also need to be thinking about their next quarterback. I don't know how many more of these rodeos Phillip Rivers is going to have. And that's going to be the biggest question. And how do you do that transition? We obsess over what the Giants are going to do with Eli Manning. At what point do we start to look at the Chargers and say, what are you guys going to do after Phillip Rivers?
Yeah, well, I think they wanted to draft Deshaun Watson a few years ago. Everything I know around the NFL, they were very interested in Deshaun Watson. And I think they realized that Phillip Rivers wasn't all that happy about that talk, and it was the year they were moving to L.A., and they backed off it a little bit. I really think that's the big issue. But yes, it's getting towards that time. You saw yesterday, Phillip Rivers, he's got to throw everything he's got to throw it 40 yards down the field. And the Patriots defenders, they were up in the face of the Chargers wide receivers all game long. And I think, one, they weren't necessarily afraid of some of the speed on the field from the Chargers at the wide receiver position. Two, they weren't necessarily afraid of Phillip Rivers' arm down the field to expose them too much. But, to your point, Mike, I think it's a good point about, is it better to lose a close one or get splattered? I'll use last year's. I think it's better to get splattered because, first of all, you can swallow that loss like we weren't the better team, we got beat, and we need to improve our football team. You keep it close, you might go dancing down Jacksonville Jaguar way like what they did last year. Oh, we don't really need to make any adjustments to our team. We were really close. We should be back there again, and maybe that complacency can set in there a little bit. But, yeah, either way, they were outclassed, the Chargers, yesterday by a fresh, healthy New England Patriots team that had the proper scheme on both sides of the ball to, like you said, just dominate the football game. The final score really doesn't tell the story.
You know, you mentioned the flirtation with Deshaun Watson. It was 2 years before that. They were looking at Marcus Mariota, if you remember that. They brought him in for a visit, a workout. They looked very closely at him. There was talk of maybe they would trade Phillip Rivers to the Titans. He'd be close to the area where he grew up, and he'd finish his career in Tennessee. And the Chargers would end up with Mariota, and that obviously never came to be. But it's been, and maybe the Chargers benefit from the fact that they're not a national brand that people obsess over, because that would have been huge drama. And it was a fairly big deal at the time. But if you make that something that's happening in New York with the Giants, or a bigger team, that's something that's hard to get past. And Phillip Rivers has dealt with a lot, and I think it's his love of the game that gets him to keep coming back. The question is, how many more years will he come back, and at what point do you see the Chargers use that first-round pick on the next Phillip Rivers, the successor to him? They weren't bashful about doing it when they had Drew Brees on the team. Now, that wasn't the same Drew Brees we've seen since then, but they drafted Phillip Rivers. Well, they drafted Eli Manning and traded him for Phillip Rivers at a time when they had Brees. So they have to make that decision. You don't want to wait too long and go through a year or two where you're just lost in the wilderness because you don't have a good quarterback.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And I mean, I think those questions about the quarterback issue and what they're going to do going forward, certainly they're going to be thinking about them this offseason. Because the other thing, too, and again, Phillip Rivers is phenomenal, and he had a great year, and he's a borderline Hall of Famer, certainly. But what the Patriots did yesterday with not only getting in the receivers' faces like I talked about, because J.C. Jackson and Stephon Gilmore, I mean, the Patriots have the best secondary. They had the best secondary left in the playoffs in the divisional round, and they still got the best secondary left now that it's the Final Four. But this J.C. Jackson, this rookie, number 27 for the fans out there, he's a special player. He was an undrafted free agent who had gotten in trouble at the University of Miami and then had to transfer to Maryland, and that's really why he was undrafted. But he was really a top 60 player in the draft. And then Stephon Gilmore on the other side, who you could argue is really one of the best corners in football, with Devin McCourty, who I would say is in the combo for one of the best free safeties in football. Their ability to match up and play man-to-man against those Chargers wide receivers. And then the other thing we saw is the Patriots not afraid to send a little pressure Phillip Rivers' way. Why? Because they knew Phillip Rivers ain't running anywhere. He's not going to escape the pocket. And I think those two things there were, a little bit on Phillip Rivers and the fact that he is, 38, 39 years old, and he can't do some of the things that he used to be able to do.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.